sometimes I'll catch myself feeling very biased pro this, and then I'll catch myself and be like, okay, well, what is the opposite? What's the opposing force behind it? And how can I see both perspectives?
Welcome back to Made You Think. Darrell Becker here, and I'm here to introduce my good friend. That is Victoria Quinn. I'm so psyched to have you here. We went to Wise Traditions 2025 and got to learn lots of things, meet lots of people, and I've got to be on Victoria's show, Give and Receive podcast. I really highly recommend you check out the growing shows over there on the TikTok and other channels. Gonna like me and like Made You Think. She's getting her show replicated using the technologies of contentsafe.co. But just wanted to say it's great to so great to spend some time with you over there in Utah and get to meet people. Victoria, please introduce yourself to the audience and who you are and what happened.
I'm Victoria Quinn or Quinola. You can find me on YouTube, Spotify, or TikTok for Give and Receive podcast. I felt like I needed to re-spark my inspiration because I really wish that people are living their lives to the most self-satisfying way. And I feel like health is really important in that manner. It was so fascinating. I don't exactly know where to begin, and I didn't exactly plan this because I wanted to talk honestly and authentically. Um, it was incredible.
I got to show up there to learn from the people who were there, the many vendors and the people who presented. For sure, Tom Cowan was there. It's the author, the the Truth About Contagion. Sally Fallon Morell, she was also there. Both of them, and we got to watch presentations by them, by Dr. Andrew Kaufman, and of course, the reason that you convinced me to go over there, Dr. Sam Bailey, Dr. Mark Bailey, for them to fly over from New Zealand, that was the clincher to make both of us choose. We better just do this because we don't know when we're going to see them again, ever. And by the way, really big props to you, Victoria, for how you handled making a really good show with Sam Bailey, Give and Receive podcast. I love that. That's brilliant. And to get her to go on for 3 hours, another good skill. So thank you for that.
Yeah, it's coming out soon, the full interview. I'm taking my time reading the book, Can You Catch a Cold? Which they mentioned. Dr. Mark Bailey mentioned in one of his interviews, which was awesome.
Yeah, and we both kind of split up and got to meet all the different people, go to different presentations. So that kind of helps because it was impossible to see everything. And I'm really glad that I paid for all the presentations. I don't know if I'll ever watch, I'd rather listen to all of them. It's a lot of audio. I mean, like I'm like probably 120 hours of audio. It's a lot of time. Though I sent a link to my mom. I bet she's going to listen to all of it. I've got other clients who will do the same thing. They're going to listen to all of it. I think that's what it's for. But it was really cool to meet various of the people who were there, the vendors, and the just making friends with people who traveled from all over. I traveled from Hawaii. You traveled from Texas, right?
Yeah.
That's how far? I'm really grateful to have met people. That's what it was about for me. It was about making the friends and making some connections, just exchanging numbers and learning people's perspectives. It was fun to go through and watch Sam Bailey just really like kind of like a synthesis of all of her previous videos in one live presentation, just getting to watch it. And for the people who are not familiar with it, because like literally this might come out as my third podcast on Made You Think show. Just to explain, this was about poking holes in the contagion theory, the germ theory of disease, the idea that you catch disease from people's bacteria or alleged virus particles or something of that nature, like a microbes essentially. And there's been no support for all of that. And so all of these doctors that I just mentioned, They all showed their receipts and took the time, what's known as the apophatic method of showing what's real by removing what isn't real. Apophosis, to find what is wrong, what is not true, what is not accurate, what is not supported by evidence. So I make up the story, Victoria, that something we have in common is we want a more accurate map of reality. Like we both desire for like not being fooled into doing things that lead to personal, small or big tragedies. I've made lots of tragic choices in my life. I probably will make some more, but I'm making less of them now. I think that is behind why do I care about this? Why do I care if viruses exist or not? That is one of the questions of these kind of things, of these doctors who are looking into it. Why do I care what is a more accurate map of reality is because I'd like to reduce the tragedies in my own life and in the lives of people I care about. I appreciate your show, Give and Receive, for that too, because I can go there, kind of like Stoic Message of the Day. I can get your little clips that you publish, just show a better way of seeing reality. I think that a more accurate map of reality. That was my motive. And yeah, please, you can go deep into your own motives and your thoughts.
One of the main reasons why I began my show is because I would like to challenge myself to be more open minded. I came across the concept of the seven Hermetic principles with, you could call it stoicism in a way, just all these different types of philosophies while going through a personal awakening, while stumbling into the terrain model, and realizing that I feel like the main reason why people feel disconnected with each other is only through personal experience. But I do have this belief, which may change, that we are all interconnected in some sort of way. We don't need to comply or adhere to other people's opinions or perspectives, but as long as we acknowledge that everyone has a right to their own belief systems, opinions, perspectives, it's really just respecting that everybody has their own experiences. And I've been really judgmental in the past, and I've gone through a very humbling ego death. I'll say that they continue on, and they'll continue on as I continue living. It's not going to end. But I would absolutely love to have an open space for people to be able to share their opinions, perspectives, belief systems, hopefully without feeling judged and feeling accepted for who they are. And it provides a very humbling challenge for me, but I would like to grow from it. I would personally like to lose any illusions of authority in regards to whose perspective is better than another, because I feel like we're all just on different levels and planes. And I would love to treat everyone as equally as I treat myself. So that's a huge reason why I began my podcast.
That is beautiful. And I came from a place of deep judgment of others and myself, of course. And I'm still pretty deep into it in some ways too. I just think of it now, I've changed the word discernment, where now I can choose what's going to happen if I go down this way and what's going to happen if I go down that way. And I think a lot of people use that, they throw around the term ego. A lot of people throw around the term ego. And I think what they're probably would be more accurately trying to say is they're trying to say self-esteem, that people build self-esteem on keeping the same conclusion or avoiding the topic of how compulsive are you about being certain about things, right? That's a thing. I hope you're still there. We'll find out. People love to actually stay and remain certain about things for their whole life. That's a kind of a thing. So I like to kind of poke holes in that. That's what my show Made You Think is all about. It's like I'm just going to be saying, "Hey, how about this one?" Last show I just did today was about weather modification. And of course, the whole climate change and global warming hoax things that are associated with it. But people's experience is sacred. Everyone has like all these sacred experiences. People's beliefs, no, that's not sacred to me. I'm going to actually poke holes in that, like by my words. But the thing is, I'm poking holes in ideas, not them. The experiences remain sacred and wonderful, hopefully, or tragic, depending. But somewhere between wonderful and tragic. That's what everyone's experience is, right? And I'm just going to point out things about ideas. And when I just am critical of ideas and I'm saying things just like when Sam Bailey was doing that up on stage, when Dr. Sam Bailey was showing all of the evidence to poke holes in contagion theory, anyone who builds their idea of self, their ego self, around contagion is real, bacteria come from outside and cause disease, viruses have been verified and come from outside and cause disease. If your basis of your identity is based on that, you could say that she's attacking you. You could think that. You could say any critique or criticism of an idea or actions is a criticism of the person. And I think that's a problem. That's a tragedy right there. That like I never like what I love to correct that when I'm listening to other shows and podcasts and I hear someone saying, "Well, I was attacked." And I was like, "No, you weren't. They were critiquing your ideas or your what you said. That was a criticism. If you were attacked, you would know it. You'd be getting assaulted. That's attacked. That's attacked. That's the only time you get attacked. But when people are being critical and then they're just using the word attacked, I have big problem with that because that's conflating things. It's kind of like saying we went to the moon. It's like, did we, you and I, Victoria, go to the moon? Like, man, we should have taken some pictures, and I don't remember that. I don't know what I was on. How did that happen? So what I wrote down, I think ego death, like, is what I wrote down, is like the question right there. You see, it's a similar kind of thing. Like, I call it certainty death. I'm not interested in being certain any longer. I'm just interested in finding a map of reality that's more accurate, that gets me to where I'd love to experience, what I'd prefer to experience. But that doesn't, it's just a map. It doesn't mean that I have like a tangible hold of this universe. Like, I have no steering wheel for this reality. I only have a map for it. And my ideas were around certainty and experience. I guess I wondered, how did wise traditions change anything that you already thought you knew, or was there anything new for you there?
I probably was the dumbest person in every room. Um, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it, but I don't come from a science background. I did wanna say one little thing that I actually did challenge my belief system. I go off one belief system at the moment, and that belief system is the power of belief. And so I thought, I can't imagine anyone challenging my belief system of the power of belief. And then someone even told me, I think one of the people working at the red infralight therapy thing, he told me, "Well, that's also a belief system. You're gonna have to release that belief as well." And I was like, "Dang, how would I go about releasing the belief of the power of belief?" So that's something we could go into in regards to science. For me, I was just listening to every I wish I could have seen the Bigglesons, but I was sitting too high at Dr. Mark Bailey's to be able to leave without being seen, so I could go see the Bigglesons. But I did hear the Bigglesons a few times on terrain theory, so it was cool. It was cool, and I there are some people I didn't know who were going to be there, who were there. So it was kind of awesome to. Oh my gosh, it's Eric Coppolino. That's awesome. Or David. I didn't ask David how to pronounce his last name, but I saw David there at the conference as well. Just cool.
Verlovsky, but definitely it was cool to meet Eric Coppolino. That was my first time getting to hear of him or meet him, and I also got to meet Robert Scott Bell because he set up his whole show right there, and I've been on his show, and he was getting the big interviews to release belief systems. Yeah, I have some ideas on how to do that, some like momentary ideas of how to do that, but from what I remember, your upbringing was religious Christian, and I know mine was with two atheist parents. So it was a very experimental place as a 7-year-old boy when I was starting to think the big questions of what death would be like and preparing for it and hiding under my covers in the daytime and turning off all my thinking for a moment to imagine what death would be like according to my parents. Just darkness and quiet. And it lasted only moments before thoughts came back, you know? So the comforting of thoughts. I now have different ideas based upon what I've looked into regarding consciousness, the work of Rupert Sheldrake and other people. Even this guy, Mark Gober, he's written a bunch of the end of upside down medicine. I got this one, but he also has the end of upside down thinking, which goes into consciousness research and where does Darrell exist? Where does Victoria exist? Like the actual people, consciousness parts. I'm not sure, but I can take a guess now that it's kind of like a cloud around us being channeled. What's your method of questioning and changing, flexing basically into new ideas, new ways of believing?
If anything feels off-centered, like it feels like there are multiple sides, I feel like I've worked really hard within myself, which honestly, you can call it working hard, but it's also really easy. It's like both hard and easy to find that homeostasis, to find balance. Whenever I find that there's some sort of uncomfortable feeling or there's a trigger or if there's an energy, if I feel a certain energy, I will lean into what the opposite feeling of that energy is. And then see what kind of feel what kind of things come into my conscious awareness based on feeling that other energy and kind of feel both of those polarizing energies until I can find balance. I don't know if that makes sense, but like if I'm sometimes I'll catch myself feeling very biased pro this and then I'll catch myself and be like, "Okay, well, what is the opposite? What's the opposing force behind it? And how can I see both perspectives?" And sometimes it's actually sometimes it feels like a crowd of people. Sometimes I feel like I'm either in trial or I'm channeling different groups, different factions of people. And this comes from when I was little, I actually was a little bit, you could say, unhealthily obsessed with James Madison. I really liked James Madison. I read a few books about him and I read about the Constitutional Convention. According to stories, according to our history, he wrote letters to all of the politicians and legislatives in the area to come together to create the Constitution. And the Constitutional Convention happened for 3 months. According to sources, he proposed two-thirds of all of the ideas of the Constitutional Convention. He took notes every single day. And something I found moral about him is that whenever he would petition to be a legislative in a certain area, most politicians would host alcohol, but he chose not to. And he said, I would like people to vote for me based on truly what they morally feel like is right. If they feel like what I'm saying is true. Of course, I'm sure there's another backstory in regards to James Madison. I think every single president was a Freemason except for Trump. So that's a whole different story. But it's like the little clues in my life, like really loving James Madison and things like that led me to question oh yeah, he was really against factions. He wrote a lot about factions and how they can be controlling and manipulative. And he wrote the Federalist Papers with Alexander Hamilton and um, James Monroe. I don't exactly know the true story of how the United States was founded because, we're told these stories, but in regards to creating our own way of due process is by collectively bringing everyone together and hearing everyone's perspectives or being willing to hear as many different perspectives as what is shown to us. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. It goes back to the same trying to understand. I think you get a gut feeling that you have of what is a good way to go, what's an accurate direction to put your energy, your actions, your research, your thinking, your associations, who you spend time with. You get a feeling really quickly, I think. It's something I've noticed in our private talks together that and obviously correct me if I'm not getting this right, but is it that you have a quick intuitive feeling whether to keep going down a certain road? Somehow you had the idea to go deeper into James Madison. Somehow that was you had that feeling long ago. Somehow you also, you had the idea to go into military service, and then also the idea to get out of military service. And it's taken you pretty far, I think. Like you really opened up your mind. Like you red pilled yourself really quickly through a lot of different things. I think you sell yourself short by saying you were the dumbest person in the room. I think that you were not the least read or least knowledgeable person in that 3,000 people crowd at Wise Traditions 2025. I got to sit next to them because those people were people who thought they know stuff. They had read a lot of things. I think that that's like actually what's a disadvantage. It's a disadvantage for me for having spent so much time in medical college. It's Oriental Medical College is still medical college. I still had to, I got indoctrinated through a lot of different things, and my first medical teacher too, teaching me that we're treating viral conditions and parasites and for sure yeast and bacteria infections. I was taught that, and I didn't question those things even though he gave me a chance to do so. I think it's questioning things. That's the part that I find really flexible and intriguing. Um, is it a gut feeling? Did I get that right? That you use? Do you have like other things to like say, okay, this person, I'll go on, made you think, or this person, no, I'm not going to go to this festival with him. It's sketchy.
You mean in regards to the Wise Traditions conference or just kind of in general?
In general. Oh, totally. It's open ended.
Oh, well, science confused the hell out of me ever since I was little. I don't ever remember liking science. And like I used to cry right before a science test. I just didn't get it. My brain didn't get it. I would try to memorize things and maybe it was like my bias because I didn't enjoy science. The only science I actually enjoyed was physics, which is basically math in high school. And then I enjoyed astronomy in college. But it frustrated me why I didn't understand science. And I'm now seeing how the military actually kind of applies to what I'm learning now because we're taught basic tactical care for somebody. And so all of these things of like, okay, well, in an emergency situation, if you're based in the concept of terrain model, how would you take care of yourself if you broke a leg, if you accidentally cut yourself? So now I'm seeing how the basics are really important. So I am grateful that I'm starting from point blank. But when terrain model came into my conscious awareness, I didn't even question the name of the podcast terrain theory. I just thought, okay, terrain, nature. And so when I heard Andy Kaufman casually state something viruses don't exist, I was working I was working at an allopathic hospital as a spiritual care coordinator at the time. And so I showed up to work that day completely baffled. And I eventually found a podcast with Alex Zek saying to go into the method lab section and look into these words. When I started noticing that most of these words, like these words for cancer, are actually Latin for inflammation of the lungs, inflammation of the heart, inflammation of the kidneys, I started seeing how from a different perspective, from a different perspective, we can actually give names and make it sound more complicated for things that we can actually heal, potentially. So if that is the case, it does give us more personal freedom and sovereignty to be able to heal ourselves. And if that is the case, we can likely live a peaceful life in which we relatively know how we're going to die, like dying in our sleep or from dying of old age, instead of being fearful, kind of subconsciously fearful that one day we might stop and have a heart attack and not know how to treat ourselves or watch that with someone else. That's why I feel like it's so important, because I mean, I've seen way too many cases in my family, and I think in most people's families and friends and social circles, where someone just dies unexpectedly from something that if they truly knew the root cause of the issue, they could treat it over time. I feel like health is directly directly correlated with how we enjoy and appreciate life.
Is definitely connected as far as I can tell now. I find that just getting out of the way of the client's problems is now being more effective than trying to add medicines and add treatment. I look at it like health is like an equation with two variables, addition and subtraction. So there's subtracting the things that made all the problems worse, created them in the first place, subtracting all the things that continue to make things bad, like really painful, honestly, and then adding the things that would make it better. And that's been part of it. But I know like that's my thing. I've been in medicine getting money for it for 27 plus years. And it's like it's a different situation, and not been in the military. I just love listening to stories about it. Like ex-military people amaze me always because of what you guys have seen and gone through. Looking into the whole criminal nature of what you got to see too. Behind the scenes, you got to see it was military police stuff, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad in the military in general with crime. This is definitely related to health, because I feel like I have a theory, I just a theory, well, hypothesis, that the shots, vaccines that were given in the military end up kind of turning us into monsters. I I was in criminal investigation division, so I was able to see the crimes from 1996 to now. Well, 2016, I believe. These are domestic violence cases, sexual assault, sexual harassment, rape, and the vast majority of people who committed these crimes were stalking and or knew the victim. Like, it wasn't just a random person on the street. This is like father to daughter or husband and wife, or these are very close cases, and these are the cases that are reported. And we're given quite a lot of shots and vaccines. And from what I've seen, just doing very basic research in regards to health, is that the vast majority of vaccines have formaldehyde, mercury, aluminum. Mercury directly affects our brain. And I feel like that is where so much of mental illness in the military stems from, is probably mercury, maybe, and I'm sure a lot of other things. I'm just starting learning about this stuff. Yeah, I have a hypothesis that it's bodily corrupting a lot of soldiers, causing soldiers to be soldiers, quite literally soldiers, like AI for the military. Just yes, sir, yes, ma'am, we'll do as you say. Because that's
Oh,
how I
obedient.
that yeah, that's how I was. That's how I grew up. And because that's how I grew up, that's exactly what I manifested into my reality as I joined the military, became an officer, left as a captain. During COVID, I was telling people to put on their masks correctly. I had sergeants, I even had an operations sergeant at the time. I could feel and see that he was against what was going on, COVID, but he dared not speak about it at all. But in my mind, and this was around the time that I was putting in money to Tesla because I thought Joe Biden was going to win, I judged him. I saw his demeanor and I was like, "Oh, he's one of those pro-Trumpers. Like that's why he's against the vaccine or, blah blah blah." I respect him highly. His name starts with a Z if he ever listens to this, but I highly respect the guy. But at the time I highly judged him. I actually didn't realize in the military that most people were feeling very off about COVID-19 and about yeah, what was going on. For me, I was just okay, we gotta do what they say.
That's such a huge change to go from obedience and conformity, like what you're describing, to where you're at now. Like, how did that happen? Like, I mean, obviously, you went to Wise Traditions 2025 with, and like, that's a very different. And you enjoyed yourself and made friends, and you heard the presentations, and like way before this, though, you've been clued in. You had Dr. Sam Bailey on your show for 3 hours. How did you get from there, from correcting some subordinate about the wearing of some paper mask on their face or a cloth mask or whatever the hell it was, to here? How did that happen?
I mean, after the military, because I wasn't able to take weed during the military, and I'm going to thank marijuana for this. Like I really will thank I'm not saying that people should always be on marijuana. I'm saying that it could be in a controlled substance, it could be helpful to broaden or open our minds. But after the military, after I left, I was doing real estate for a bit. I was taking a whole lot of weed, and I didn't realize that I was depressed at the time. I didn't realize that my ex was cheating on me at the time. But what I was manifesting on TikTok was I first started getting into Free Britney, like as in Free Britney Spears. And
Uh-huh.
people started saying like she's not real, like someone took her or their custody, all this stuff. And that actually opened a rabbit hole to quite literally everything else. And then a series of personal things happened in my life, which was just humbling, one after the other. I will say the holidays were also clues. Like on a holiday, something would happen, or I would adopt a cat whose birthday was on Easter. But all these different things, these synchronicities started ramping up very quickly, and it started freaking me out. It freaked me out. And so I had to realize that some sort of force. I've always believed in God or the source or universe, didn't exactly I grew up Catholic, but then decided to leave religion. But I always knew there's some sort of like spiritual force out there. It just felt like it. And I had to acknowledge that that was what was leading me into a very intentional path. I decided, first of all, that I needed to stop dating in general so that I can actually heal myself. I started intentionally going back into my past history with my family, school, because I realized that in order for me to have a life that I enjoy, if I'm meant to have a family or if I'm meant to have in a career of helping people, I need to first heal myself because I can't just go around projecting my own trauma onto other people. which is what I was doing, and then judging and putting the blame outside of everyone else before looking within myself. And so these rabbit holes, it started with Free Britney, and then it got into Noah's Ark, Revelations, um, aliens, Tartaria, just a whole bunch of crazy, like the moon. What
Oh,
shape
that
is
moon landing, huh? What
what
shape
shape
is
is the Earth?
what shape is the Earth? I know, right? I know, and it's funny too, right? Like only like 5 years ago, I would have been like, yeah, I know what shape the Earth is," but like the reality is, I didn't really know what the shape the Earth is. I was guessing it was actually hollow with an internal thing, but still guessing. I mean, 20 years ago, it's just a longer journey, but the same thing. Yeah, kudos to you for like going the like honoring yourself to take a break from toxic connection to people who don't serve you. I find like that's there's a lot to be learned for that. And I've been limiting, I would say really limiting toxic exposure and over exposure to people who don't serve me. I think right at that moment where I was really committed to doing that, that's kind of when I met you. And that was an interesting time period. Yeah, like just cutting out some of the worst people in my present day life. It's a fun journey. I think that anyone who's really certain of their conclusions, that's really like not the smartest guy in the room. That when you're really certain, that's like automatically I'm like, nah, like I think, if you really think you got this figured out, something's wrong with you. I think if you're sort of still asking questions and still poking holes in, well, that doesn't work. That's kind of the scientific method. Basically, you're just trying experiments and then seeing it doesn't work. We were seeing presentations, Kaufman, Cowan, the Baileys, and the Bigglesons. Everyone was just trying to figure out reality and verifying things. By the way, I looked up like since the 1990s, exactly how many vaccines do enlisted personnel in the US military generally get? And it listed 22 injections of various kinds. And I know that they probably mixed like several of them all in one shot so they could be like, get it over with. Like, when I asked like one guy years ago when I first visited Hawaii, he was describing his military experience. He was ex-military at like a hotel, lying over with like needles going to both butt cheeks, both arms, kind of like that, where you're like a cattle, like you're just like, like just being, like basted, like, like some like chicken or something. um,
That's pretty
yeah,
accurate.
that's it's hardcore. Like I'm laughing, we're both smiling about it, but like that's kind of harsh and sad. I mean, uh, uh, it's really harsh, of course, if you end up being one of those who are paralyzed or dead from that, because I'm sure there's a lot of those people, that you don't like, they don't report, like they went in, got vaccinated, died, and the army doc is going to not report that in the same way as a pediatric doc is not going to report that, oh, they died right there in the office right after the injection. That's happening. When it's a little kid, we get all somber like this. When it's an ex-military kick-ass woman like you and you survived it, we could smile because it's part of the samsara, the pain of this life. I had different pain. I didn't go through that specific pain. I had less vaccines because I'm older than you. So, but I did, they still injected me, and I bet like that just notched down the brilliance and genius that I have, like several layers, put like a cloud over me and made me that much more susceptible to neuroses of various kinds. But I like to think like this is like neuroplasticity, or just like rather the personality plasticity that we can just relearn. I like to think that this kind of relearning that we've both been doing, and why we're friends in the first place, is because it's about opening up to new experiences And this is not a clenching to like, now we are strong believers of the terrain model of health and disease. It's like, that's our new religion. It's like, no, like, here's a neat map. Looks to be more accurate for now. Pretty good. You know, this is cool. And in the same way as I'll go to see the short videos that you release on the TikTok and other places, and I'll get a message that takes me back to myself to say, here's your message for this moment, Darrell. Something to relax about, not to clench about, you know? Relaxing, doing my breath work is like that's how I relax. It's because it's like these moments where I'm not thinking, moments where I'm not breathing and using my energy. It's kind of what I wish to sort of demo over there in Utah, but like it wasn't the right time kind of thing because we were so busy. But I really like needed to take my time to do that and then go back to the conference. Like I found an empty conference room up there in the Hyatt because we're in the Hyatt Regency, Salt Lake City, Utah. And like I had to look, where can I go do my breathing exercises? And there they had like, you know, some unlocked rooms out there, you know, like with a huge view of the cityscape. And I just went in there and played the video, like Breathe with Sandy, and just got to relax and have those moments of not breathing, of everything relaxing. Here's my theory I'll share with you and ask for your thoughts. Like the reason that breathing exercises that have breath cessation work, where you're doing deep breathing over and over again, really deep breathing fast, a deep like a hold of the breath for about 6 seconds, letting it all out, and then no breathing with no air in your lungs is now you're relaxed. And it's going back to the time when you were a baby in utero, when I was a baby in utero, and I had all the air and nutrients coming through the umbilical cord. And in fact, it was a liability to breathe because then I would choke if I tried to breathe with my, you know, lungs. That wouldn't work as an unborn baby. Everything was all done. All I had to do was occasionally twitch muscles to grow them, you know, and move and kick or something, but mostly just stay still and float and listen and feel. And everything was all done. And that's how it feels when you've breathed really deeply for a series of minutes and now you're not breathing. You're not holding air in. When you're using energy to hold the air in, that's it's energy. It's like you're holding the balloon with air is it takes energy to hold it in there. You let it all out, but you've hyperoxygenated and you relax. You could go much longer, and that's why free divers do that. They're diving down and they let all the air out because now they're relaxed. All the energy can be for their arms to swim. They can go full 10 minutes, no air, just like Wim Hof did in the Arctic, hardcore. You know, I can go 3 minutes, a little bit more maybe, you know. On my good day, 4 minutes. But that's no exertion. The idea is about not clenching and not trying to make it happen. Like I didn't try to make our Wise Traditions 2025 experience have to fit into a certain thing, like to be a certain way. You know, in the same way as I never wanted our friendship to have to be a certain way. This is the way. It's this way, the way it's happening now. This is our friendship. This is, you know, our shows that we do. Yeah, this can go over on give and receive. It I'm 53 now and a little wiser than I was 10 years ago and certainly 25 years ago. It's been a learning experience about relaxing into it. I think you can appreciate what I'm getting at is a lot of these things, like whether you're red pilled for the last couple of years, like you are, or it's been a gradual red pilling process of one red pill after another for 20 years for me. Um, and the process has been also learning about unclenching and relaxing. I think that that's been a thing about it. Like I'm learning to unclench and relax and let go with it. Open to your thoughts on any of that.
directly relates to the conference because I think I went a little too hardcore with terrain model and, because I did go a little hardcore. I was actually kind of pretty much stalked by a community of people in a city in Mexico, and I had to rethink about how I've been projecting as well as the way I come off too, because I can't just lean all the way toward one particular thing. I need to be able to see the perspective of everything. Even people, like, for example, with the power of belief, if someone believes that viruses are real, in their reality, they're real. And I know, like, it's like, well, you need factual evidence. Yeah, this is where the science comes in. This is where the scientific method, how a virus is isolated. So, but it's like, okay, then if you believe that viruses are real, look into the science. Or if you believe they're not real, look into the science. This relates to the conference because I had the opportunity to go to dinner with the Bigglesons, Sam, Key, and David. And at first, at first I kind of thought that, well, where are they going to eat? Because this this conference is about health. They don't care. They just want to enjoy what they're eating. Like, and that's the point. And so if something is if some belief is so religious that it's disabling someone from enjoying life, then maybe it's worth reconsidering that belief.
I think so. You're kind of touching on the nocebo effect, where if you believe that you're going to get sick, you believe you're going to contract conditions. I just went over this with the client that I saw today, where he believed that he was going to get sick because he was swimming in an area and they said, "Oh, some dead goats came down this way," and they measured leptospirosis in the water. And so, lo and behold, he gets sick and gets tested, and the tests are all false positives and nasty, like not really showing any reality. They just say he's got leptospirosis essentially. But the real reality is that by be worrying about it, he for sure can make sure that he can generated the condition for himself. There's a lot to be done for just being alert to like what we put in our minds, like the thoughts of getting sick, and also in our bodies, like the food that I saw everyone stuffing down during all the meals. you know, um, I always find it an interesting challenge. Right? You wanted to go off on that one, the food?
Wait, how was the food? Because I didn't have any of the dinners. Sorry if you did if you
Oh,
don't forget the other thing you're gonna mention.
no, no. I think I was just touching on just like the thoughts of what's going on in terms of what you put in your body, and I also I appreciate just being around people, making new friends. The lunches and dinners were opportunities for me to make new friends. That's why I was there. And I was going to take note of people like really, really mowing down on the bread and butter. And as far as bread and butter goes, that was some pretty high quality sourdough bread and some high quality butter. But it's also some high quality carb and high quality sugar that just like is blows all of just like it creates all kinds of like problems is what I'm trying to say. That is problems. I think that there's better diets to do, and a lot can be done. Like my client today, where he's on day one essentially of a real water fast, but it's been 2 days of a partial water fast with a bunch of supplements and some lemon and things like that. He's taller than me and weighs less than me, and that's not good. And he's older, like 20 years older than me, and that's not good. And so like I'm cautious about how long the water fast will go. What I'm getting at is it's important to be like conscious about nutrients and thoughts and ideas and people and all of that that goes in, because those are all like the nourishing things. Like when you decided I'm done with relationships like this, like I've had my last you say you've had your last toxic relationship until you can like have a real trad man and start the family. That's great, like more power to you. I want you to have a beautiful life, because it just helps me out if you have that, and in the same way, I don't know exactly what makes for a good life and what is a good proper choice for people to do. Like if you think you found the right guy, I don't know. I don't think you do either. If you if that client thinks that he found the right diet, if he starts up with bone broth in 5 days and starts adding nutrients to it, do I think that the carnivore and avoiding the plant foods is going to help him? I think so. I think it's going to really, really help him. Something I was reading before, and I don't know if it's true, about like eating one meal a day and having like largely a bunch of time like going hungry, eating one meal every 3 days and having fasting between those two and living to 700 plus years. I don't know if it's true. I just find this stuff and I don't know what's real or not. I I loved those meals because of the people, and I got to totally, I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it on the show. I snuck into the banquet because I really needed to see Dr. Mark Bailey do that presentation, and I needed a way in. And by the way, I had the money in hand, ready to pay my way in, but no one would take the money and let me in. So I had to sneak in wearing a volunteer apron that my friends had. I had to pretend to be volunteer. And then I could just duck underneath the ropes there and then just go on in, seat myself down, take the apron off, and I met some new friends. And then I had a really, really good time at the after party up on the 6th floor, which is where it was really at, going into all things religious and spiritual, actually, going into all things spiritual, like the dividing line between those folks who would have an open mind to psychedelics, like the cannabis that you mentioned earlier in the show. I got to speak on the other psychedelics, like the ayahuasca ceremony and the bufo ceremony, and the peyote ceremony, all three of which I'm familiar with. They were ceremonies. There was a leader leading the ritual who was guiding everyone through that. This was not recreational. This was a ceremony. There was procedure for everything. There was prayer. And then there was across from us, like on the other side, those were the guys who were full on Christian. And one of them was even doing a mission in Nicaragua coming up, in the week after Wise Traditions. And they had never experienced the intense and very deep reality of a psychedelic spiritual experience. But we were shutting down the restaurant, Victoria. We were like 11:30 p.m. So the cook had joined us and the wait staff joined us, like the one guy who was waiting us here. And I was sitting next to a chiropractor. She was like more of a neutral party, not deep into the Christian world and not deep into the psychedelic world. Just sort of like she was just a neutral chiropractor observer. And whenever I bring up psychedelics to Christian folks, I see the fear in their eyes because I'm describing an experience that we gave a metaphor to. Five out of the six of us had all experienced skydiving. So we knew once you jump out of the plane, you can't, oh, I changed my mind and unjump. you know, the wind takes you, you're out of the plane. You're not going to sort of crawl your way back in. It doesn't work that way. Once you jump, you're jumped. And once you take a psychedelic experience, hopefully with ceremony, but even if it was recreational, you're in it and you're going to have that experience. And you could be afraid of the experience. You could think you're going to have a bad trip and that you could make yourself have a bad trip. You could think, I don't know what's going to happen, but I feel kind of psyched and optimistic. And you can have that. That's the way I've done it in general. I I'm saying all of this because it was an opportunity to meet people at Wise Traditions of different perspectives. And I could see that look of the deer in the headlights, like I have with my pastors here, by the way, that they're, like I've attended church over here. And I tried to describe to them the psychedelic experiences that opened my mind spiritually. Like, why am I there? It's partially because of that. I'm open-minded. I can feel energy more since that. And I go to their church because they stand and sing. And I could feel and see the power of their prayer. Real. That's real. And unlike the psychedelic experience or skydiving, you could just step outside and leave and be, in the city of Hilo, you know. You're not stuck in it. Like you're not like experiencing the impact of it for the next 4 hours or 8 hours or 16 hours or that kind of thing. Uh, I don't remember talking psychedelics with you, but can you relate to any of that?
Oh, I've taken psychedelics. That's for sure.
It's a different thing. Like I remember recreational LSD, recreational mushrooms, recreational synthetic mescaline, no ceremony from age 15 to age 26. It was 44 different psychedelic experiences, and only 3 of them were the last 3 were ceremonies with ayahuasca with a shaman in Peru. And that was where I saw the difference. The difference being like I don't know what I'm doing. There's no one guiding this experience. There's no vision for a world that I'm going to create with this sacred moment. And there's no actions that I'm taking to create that world. I was missionless. I was a poor missionless bastard. A mission is a vision of the world that you're going to create and the actions you take to make that world happen. You put those two together, you have a mission. It's one version of having a mission statement. My mission that I work on periodically, I make a powerful world by helping myself and others. That's so I know if I'm doing the right things, I'm on mission. I have a shadow mission of making a chaotic world by taking whatever I want. My shadow mission. I know that I'm in shadow if I'm doing things that are in alignment with that shadow mission. So, yeah, grasping and taking and that kind of thing. I There still is beautiful moments of having unstructured psychedelic experiences. Like it's still like learning happens. Obviously, you said you were in real estate, marijuana, as you called it, that technically is one of the psychedelics. Changes what you feel. You said you didn't realize that you were sad, depressed, I think was the word you said. That, because things, of course you're sad because you were in disconnection and it sucked then. This is one of the sad things to caution people who are watching and listening. It is unfortunate, but like, yes, you can soothe yourself with cannabis and other medicines, but unfortunately, you might be disconnected for what you actually feel. And if you're disconnected for what you emotionally feel, you're not getting the what's it called, the needed data that needs to come in. Like there's data that needs to come in so that you can like to alert you. Like right here, I can feel this hitting my hand. If it was, I could feel scratching, and if I got a lighter, I could burn, and then I need to move my arm away. Same thing with emotions. If you can't feel that and you don't metaphorically move your arm away, you get really more and more hurt. And I think you kind of learned that at some point, and I guess you kind of cut down the cannabis a little bit.
Every time I take something, because I've also had peyote, everything I take when I do take it is intentional. I intentionally use it to receive the channeled messaging, to go into healing. Every single time I do take something, it's intentional. I used to take it for distraction, but the funny thing about me taking a whole bunch of marijuana during that time I was depressed, my ex was cheating on me, I was in real estate. I took so much marijuana, it led me into a spiritual and personal awakening. So there's no going back. It's the same thing as jumping off the plane. The moment you take a substance, that substance is quite leading you into some sort of awakening of some sort. I don't think I can physically distract myself away from the experience of when I take marijuana or a psychedelic. I think I've run across a few people since this journey that have alluded to me potentially quitting marijuana or quitting all substances in general. I don't drink alcohol anymore because last time I was pressured to. I don't think I'll ever be that person to quit something, to say absolutely no on marijuana. For me, alcohol, I just don't really care about it anymore. I see the spiritual and conscious benefit of taking it, especially if my heart, we can feel it. It's a sensation. If my heart feels closed off, if I feel like I don't want to go out and see people, I'm if I feel like I'm hating people so much, I don't even want to walk out my bedroom door, then I'll consider taking marijuana and reflecting. And and that actually helps me love people more. And I'm not saying that people need marijuana, but I am saying that nature does provide things for us if and when we need it. But it has to be it's what you said in the beginning, it's discernment. So there are times where I feel so hateful actually that I decide for myself, okay, I there's something that I know consciously I'm distracting myself from. And if I were to take marijuana or if I were to take psychedelics, it would open me up so that it does help me in that way. I only take these substances to have some sort of personal conscious awakening.
I totally hear you. And for the longest time, it was the same thing for me, but it just doesn't serve me anymore. You know, I just can't really do it responsibly like that, even like once in a while. It puts a dullness on me. It stops me from being productive like this, of making shows, of tending to actually all the tasks, like just doing them, doing all this stuff on the list. It's like I just like everything just gets it goes backwards basically. And it also is associated by me now with being in pain. Pain from, like surgical operations I had this year. Like that was the last time I was indulging there. And other like trips to the ER for other issues. That was the last time for me. It's associated the wrong way for me, but it is associated as a medicine nicely for you. And of course, I know other people who like, make the good high five figures, like in excess of 50K per month, and they do their weed every day or frequently or something like that, and like more power to them. Like having a good life and a good relationship with their daughter and figuring stuff out, like what makes their life better and all that. For me, I've had to move on to things like the breathing exercises. I do the work of this psychodrama type work that's done in the Mankind Project and elsewhere. I really would love to like get another co-ed group going. That's awesome. But essentially work that creates an altered space and a healing moment, healing little snippets of time, like painful moments in the past, or moving forward, or like having various aspects of the personality be like given a voice, given a moment. Um, yeah, real healing moments, I think, is everyone has their different medicine. This is wonderful. Some people can really do that stuff, and that's just not me. But I will always have the time and space for these really powerful psychedelic medicines, preferably in a ceremony. I wish that the Native American church was here again on island again, but they're not. But that was really cool to get to join in and be in the teepee with all of them, and like men, women, and children. There was about 45 souls in the teepee, staying in all night. Yes, the children went to sleep. They weren't all tripping on peyote. That's what children the children go to sleep. The children were taken care of, and the leaders were there, like holding the space and ceremony. The vision was given. Prayer. What are you going to do? How are you making this world better? The fire tender was in the center, tending the fire all night. That was wild to watch. Just as you can imagine, you've been on psychedelics, so you know how cool it is to look at fire. You know, so I highly recommend that if it's still part of your possible diet, to have an actual ceremony psychedelic experience somehow or other that is facilitated by someone who's done this many times before and knows how to do that. The Bufo experience that I had was Bufo is a resin from a frog, a toad actually, and there was a lead up heart opening medicines to lead up and open up for that, and then the experience of inhaling the frog, the Bufo resin itself, technically is about 2 minutes, but just like jumping out of the plane or other psychedelic moments, like heavy duty psychedelics, 2 minutes can feel like a very, very long time. Very exhilarating. So I recommend that one if that was possible. I I recommend the ayahuasca experience, but the thing is that's like really about finding the right ayahuasquero, the right shaman to lead that. And yeah, anything that you and whatever works for you, Victoria.
Would you ever take psychedelics and jump off a plane at the same time?
That goes back to a joke that me and my friend Stu used to have about, you know, just like jumping out of the plane just at the moment of peaking and just like combining it with each of these other intense experiences and then just taking the whippet and then just at that same moment. you know and God, Victoria, that's what I got to do just to get going every day, just to face another day. you know so yeah, no, obviously I'm not that extreme thrill chaser. uh I would consider it, but you know what, it's unlikely that they'll let it happen. At least, like I've seen these guys here, the jumpers here on island. They do like 17 plus jumps per day and get paid for it, of course. Yeah, I think they'd be able to tell if my eyes were saucers. I think that they'd be like, yeah, no jumpy for you.
Dang. I would too, but I don't think I'd be able to hide it.
I think if you wear sunglasses or something like that, and if you play it cool, you gotta play it really cool, like you could fill out all of your paperwork, because that's what you're doing at first, right? You're filling out all your paperwork here. This is not military jump, this is civilian, and like you're there and you're going through the orientation, and it's pretty simple. I was just looking at the guys shoot, like basically there were two golf balls that were glued to the knobs that were the shoot one and shoot two. They were like fluorescent knobs. So I was seeing, in case for some reason the guy passed out, I would need to find those knobs and pull them. That's how I'd have to do it. And then I'd have to learn how to grab the rings and orient myself and fly not into the ocean and not into the windmills, because we were coming down and that's what was there. Ocean, windmills, and the landing strip. And the job was to go with the wind and take us to the landing strip, like where the plane takes off. That guy landed me about maybe 20 feet away from where I signed my papers. Like that's how accurate he was in just like taking us down just right and going with it perfectly. Talk about expert. That's expert level. What's he got? Like 2,000 jumps under his belt or more? 5,000 jumps? I don't even know. Yeah, those guys, they impress me. It's pretty chill here. This is the big island of Hawaii. If you did show up over here and you want to go do jumps, and then you also wanted the psychedelic experience at the same time, it's possible. Maybe.
Something too, I mean, what's it called? It only costs like $1,000 or $2,000 to go through school, and then you can be a tandem one. And then you can just live your life
Oh.
being a tandem parasailer or something. And it's
Uh,
less intense. You're you gotta track the circular motions of the wind and stuff. But I think it's parasailing or paragliding. Paragliding.
okay.
It's
Yeah.
relatively cheap to become a tandem paraglider.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, I think jumps here were $300 each, and that was back like 3 years ago for me. Um, that was on my birthday. I turned 50 and jumped, you know. That was a good birthday present that I got. And I I think extreme experiences are amazing. I think it's been beautiful to touch on the spiritual with you, because this is the spiritual experience of being alive, and to grow and to question things. Like we went through a lot of questioning to get to meet each other, to like formulate ideas, to make our shows, and then just show up at Wise Traditions. That was really cool. I I'm really grateful for all the people who put that whole thing on, Sally Fallon to hold it together for this many years. And I want you to give you a chance to totally plug your show and say last thoughts that you want to share.
Well, thank you all for listening, and I hope y'all gained something for yourself from it. Yeah, I'm really grateful to have met you and everyone there at the conference. It was I mean, it was a very pivotal point personally in my life too. Truly inspiring. I came from inspiration. That's exactly what I got. I have a podcast called Give and Receive Podcast. The symbol is a vase for the age of Aquarius. It's got all 5 elements to include ether. So there's a tree on fire in a vase of water and air. And yeah, I'm on YouTube and Spotify. I put TikTok shorts on and it's on Facebook as well and Instagram. But I'm gonna be using Content Save soon, so I'm excited to see how that plays out. But yeah, thank you so much for listening, and I'll let you go with your personal life, Darrell.
Thank you so much. And it's been great having you on. Made you think. Yeah, like welcome for the first time and hopefully not the last time. Everyone out there, I really hope that all the memes that you get to consume, the stuff that I'm dishing out, the stuff that you get to see and listen to over on Give and Receive show, that is exactly what I'm aiming for. Just find ways to help make your life more wonderful. Thanks so much. Bye, everyone.
Made you think.